Good evening and welcome to This Week, a weekly news program. I'm your host, Anwar Gambatr. The 20th edition of the World Export Development Forum, hosted by the International Trade Center, was held in Ulaanbaatar this week. This landmark event marks the first post-pandemic conference, bringing together businesses, governments, NGOs, women and youth. This year's conference aims to address the challenges caused by multiple crises such as conflict, climate change and COVID-19 pandemic, and rising costs. With a particular focus on developing, landlocked and least developed countries, the event is also addressing the specific needs of Mongolia, the host country.
Thank you. We are co-organizing with our development partners and the United Nations, as well as the High Representative's Office of the United Nations for Landlocked Developing Countries, this excellent forum on World Export Development Forum. We are organizing it under the auspices of the President because it's in line with the presidential foreign policy. Everything that we stand for is also being regarded in this forum. Not only in this session today, we are talking about landlocked developing countries, but the entire forum is being organized for the export development of Mongolia and other developing countries. It's a great opportunity to not only for Mongolia but also to all the developing countries and partners coming in for this forum. We are discussing green trade facilitation. We're discussing sustainability. We are discussing organic and digitalization. So organic development and digitalization. So this is all in line with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, but also it's in line with our Vision 2050. So therefore, this forum as a whole is very important, not only in terms of exposure, not only for creating the platform for these nations and for development partners. This is very important for Mongolia to share knowledge, but also for learning from our partners and from our fellow landlocked developing countries.
The Core Today program, taking place on June 27th and 28th, features high-level plenary centered around trade diversification and green export opportunities. These discussions explore innovative trade-led solutions to navigate the complex economic landscape and promote sustainable practices.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really been a pleasure to be here in Mongolia. It's my first time. The key aspects that we're looking at, are they going to interpret or you're going to dub it when you're finished? Okay, okay. We're here under the theme, diversifying through digital and green. And the main issue is how do we help the Mongolian government and landlocked developing countries diversify in a new environment, in a new world. We see inequality being one of the major aspects. We see the growth in the green trade and also what that means in terms of new due diligence legislation and the requirements for exports going to Europe, going to the UK. We also see what has happened with the various geopolitical tensions, and Mongolia is in the center of them between, of course, the two big powers. So what we are trying to do is how do we help create a national export strategy for Mongolia? How do we help to work on increasing digitalization for small businesses? How do we help with access to finance? How do we help with trade facilitation and building better trade connections and trade corridors outside of the traditional ones? We're hoping to have business-to-business meetings and also to launch a She Trades, which is our Women's Economic Empowerment chapter here in Mongolia. So that is why we're here.
In addition to the main conference debates, several side events are organized to provide capacity building, insights, networking opportunities, and partnership for small businesses looking to engage in international markets. Noteworthy highlights include private sector consultations specifically tailored for landlocked developing countries, the Young Social Entrepreneurs Competition, and the launch of the Mongolia She Trades Hub, a platform aimed at empowering women in trade.
So today is the first day of the pre-day, the day zero of the World Export Development Forum being organized for the first time in Mongolia. This is a huge opportunity for Mongolia, which was being supported through the United Nations, and especially the International Trade Center, ITC, with support and collaboration with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, to really create a world forum for enhancing export development. It is even more important for Mongolia and the 32 landlocked developing countries, LLDCs. Given the fact that trade and trade potential has not been utilized in the best possible way for landlocked developing countries, Mongolia's leadership in enabling its trade development is a huge opportunity. So not only does it open doors for Mongolia to be a kind of a leader in this whole area of trade facilitation, trade development, trade, the four facets of trade we're looking at, and in terms of also the transport corridors, the different routes that we're looking at, innovative solutions, how we can really leverage the huge potential that Mongolia and other LLDCs have. Specifically for Mongolia, it's very important because Mongolia is very, very rich in its natural resources and especially mineral resources. 85% of Mongolia's exports is to neighboring countries and to as raw material. The huge economic potential that Mongolia has to really have value-added processed finished products at a higher economic value to be offered to the world. And there we need to find solutions going beyond its landlocked boundaries to find different new innovative approaches, leveraging digitalization, e-trade, e-commerce, and all those processes. So this World Export Development Forum is certainly going to give us, especially for Mongolia and all other 31 other landlocked developing countries, the opportunity to discuss, find solutions, innovative ways to approaches, strategies to really leverage its trade potential.
To further support businesses, the WEDF, also features business export clinics offering practical guidance and assistance and training sessions on quality management and market linkages. With the emphasis on trade diversification and green practices, the World Export Development Forum 2023 Ulaanbaatar strives to foster inclusive and sustainable economic growth, offering a platform for collaboration and innovation. As the world seeks to recover from the impacts of various crises, while this gathering of international stakeholders paves the way for a resilient and prosperous future.
It's not only about high returns on investment.
The Prime Minister of Mongolia, Oirtenlos Namsara, embarked on an official visit to the People's Republic of China. During his trip, he visited Tianjin port, acquainting himself with its operations.
The Prime Minister's visit to Tianjin port is related to the port recovery policy that aims to connect border ports to roads and railroads and further gaining access to the sea. Mongolia holds 10 hectares of land in Tianjin port. It's possible to turn this place into a transport and logistics center and make it accessible to the sea. The Prime Minister suggested to the executive of Tianjin Port Group to put Mongolian-owned land into operation within 1 year. More than 90% of the cargo from ports such as Zamiut, Shivehurun, Gashan-Sohet, and Bichicht in Mongolia enters the Tianjin Porter Point on its way to foreign destinations. So when Mongolia puts its land in Tianjin into operation, the issue of cargo being stuck will be eliminated. As a result, the cost of storage and thereby the goods will decrease, and it will become possible to get connected to about 500 ports of more than 180 countries. The executive of Tianjin Port said that the cost of sea transportation is 100 times lower than air transportation, 10 times lower than rail transportation, and 3 times lower than road transportation, and therefore it will reduce the cost. In addition, 200 people are be able to complete the necessary work that is now being done by 1,200 people, thanks to the introduction of the automated system to the port operation. Moreover, the automated system uses renewable energy that noticeably decreases energy consumption. Last year, 471 million tons of consumer products and 21 million standard containers entered through Tianjin port. According to this year's data, it's expected to increase 653 million tons.
Ulaanbaatar plays host to a groundbreaking event as female foreign ministers from around the world gather for the first ever female foreign ministers meeting. Over 2 days, these leaders address pressing global challenges and seek possible solutions. The meeting comes at a crucial time when gender equality and women's empowerment remain significant challenges in the global decision-making process. Despite progress made in advancing gender equality and combating discrimination, women's representation in senior leadership positions remains disproportionately low worldwide. Recognizing the positive impact of women's leadership, the meeting seeks to amplify women's voices and promote their participation in decision-making processes.
Last year, during the United Nations General Assembly, I had the opportunity to meet with female ministers. It is worth noting that more than 30 out of 193 UN member states have female ministers. Previously, at informal meetings among women ministers, concrete decisions were rarely made. To address this, I proposed the creation of a female foreign policy network, a group comprising female foreign ministers. I presented this initiative to the President of Mongolia, suggesting an unprecedented meeting in Mongolia, which has garnered significant support. This event, organized under the President's auspices, holds great importance as it marks the first of its kind in Asia. The presence of influential ministers and distinguished guests emphasizes the significance of this event. The concept of feminist foreign policy is relatively new in Mongolia. This concept was introduced by the Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs back in 2014. Over 20 countries have already adopted this policy, aiming to achieve gender balance in foreign relations. It is important to note that feminist foreign policy doesn't prioritize one gender over another. Instead, professionalism and gender neutrality are emphasized in the field of foreign relations. Today's event has two primary objectives: to showcase and promote Mongolia globally, and to facilitate the exchange of ideas among female foreign ministers on global peace, security, food supply, food security, and climate change. We are considering the possibility of holding such meetings periodically. This event serves as a powerful demonstration of the vital role women can play in diplomacy, inspiring and motivating women while benefiting young diplomats with an interest in foreign relations. Our country's strong commitment to democracy, respect for human rights, and advocacy for regional and global peace and security have gained global recognition. The value of freedom is paramount, and hosting various meetings within our country yields numerous benefits. With the increased frequency of large-scale state visits, we have effectively showcased our country's capabilities and contributions on the international stage.
Mongolia has been actively supporting international initiatives for women and has contributed Mongolian women peacekeepers to the United Nations peacekeeping missions.
Today's meeting of the female foreign ministers gathered here in Ulaanbaatar is very important to highlight women's role in leadership in global issues. The issues that are being focused on during today's event are climate change, food security, and peace and security. And these are very important crises that every country in the world is facing, including Mongolia. And therefore, as UNDP, we're very proud and honored to be able to participate to this dialogue. The female foreign ministers that are gathered here and other ministers are showing their leadership and how the engagement of women in decision-making and policy-making is important, and we must increase the number of women in these roles so that there's equal representation and women's voice and agency is equally represented in all policies and decision-making. Well, women's empowerment is a fundamental human right. Mongolia, as other countries, have signed on to international human rights treaties. So giving women's rights is not a privilege or something to be granted. It's an inherent right from birth that all women are equal to men. And therefore, putting the efforts to really ensure that women are empowered is very, very important, because over hundreds and thousands of years of history, women have not been empowered. They have not had equal chance and opportunity in the economy, in education, in other sectors, and therefore this is a time in the 21st century now to finally achieve gender equality for all women in every country around the world.
The Female Foreign Ministers Meeting aims to foster consensus and solidarity among its participants, serving as a catalyst for promoting multilateral cooperation to address global challenges. By sharing best practices of female foreign policymaking, the meeting aspires to shape pro-women foreign policies not only in Mongolia, but also in the wider Asian region. Mongolia hopes that its initiative will inspire other countries to pursue feminist foreign policies and contribute to global efforts for gender equality.
So I think the international community and Mongolia can work together. I have to say that there are several very good examples in Mongolia, but also outside Mongolia. And in that sense, I think countries can learn from each other. Countries can see what other countries are doing. Let me give you one or two examples. One, there was an experiment done in India. Younger women were given a chance to work with the women leaders, and that really sort of they served as a role model. And in that sense, I think that really brought out a lot of confidence and inspiration amongst young women, so they are able to break their barrier. Same thing was in Lesotho. There was a study done, or there was an experiment done where younger women were exposed to women leaders, and that really that inspired them. So I think countries can share experiences, share practices, countries can inspire each other, and in that sense, we all together can advance towards gender equality.
Guided by the themes of peace and security, climate change and food security, the meeting will provide a platform for ministers to deliberate and exchange information. The year 2022 witnessed increased geopolitical tensions, complicating the resolution of global challenges and exacerbating existing ones. Issues such as climate change, natural disasters, and the COVID-19 pandemic require greater international cooperation, as no country can tackle these challenges on its own. Particularly vulnerable are small and impoverished nations, which face rising unemployment, poverty, and political instability. These threats also pose risk to global peace, security, and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030.
His Excellency Mr. Khuril Sukh Ukna, President of Mongolia, Her Excellency Ms. Batsetseg Batmong, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, I'm honored to join you for the first ever Women Foreign Ministers meeting in Mongolia. At the outset, I thank and commend the government of Mongolia for this important initiative. I deeply appreciate its long tradition of pursuing a feminist foreign policy and placing women at the forefront of its socio-economic endeavors. Excellencies, the focus of this event on the role of women in promoting peace and security, tackling climate change, and ensuring food security is indeed very timely. These are all interrelated issues and, in fact, the most pressing challenges of our time. They also hold the key to emerging from the current overlapping crises of the COVID-19 pandemic, conflicts, and climate change. The gender dimension of these issues is also well recognized. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, and I quote, "Gender equality offers a path to sustainable peace and conflict prevention, and yet we are moving in the opposite direction." He also pointed out that the climate crisis hits women and girls the hardest. They suffer disproportionately from the lack of food, water scarcity, and forced migration. Governments, civil society, and international institutions must prioritize knowledge sharing, resource mobilization, and joint actions to eliminate gender-based violence in all its forms and manifestations. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, as women leaders in our respective fields, we should continue to pool our collective resolve and resources to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment, to empower and enable women everywhere to reach their full potentials, to live a life of dignity and justice, and not to be left behind in our policies, actions, and achievements. Through this meeting, we are sending a strong message of that resolve and commitment, and I'm honored to have been part of this excellent initiative.
The consequences of climate change and the ongoing pandemic have further weakened worldwide food systems and amplifying existing inequalities. Mongolia, as the host country, has proposed the 3 guiding topics of discussion: the role of women in promoting peace and security, climate change, and food security. These topics reflect on the urgent need for collaborative action to address these pressing issues and achieve a sustainable and equitable future. The female foreign ministers meeting will be held in person in Ulaanbaatar with the honorable presence of Mongolia's president. Those unable to attend in person will have the opportunity to follow the proceedings throughout the live streaming. Panel discussions on the guiding topics will foster engaging conversations and facilitate the exchange of valuable insights and best practices among the participating ministers and officials. This groundbreaking meeting signifies a significant step towards promoting women's leadership in international affairs and advancing gender equality on a global scale. As female foreign ministers come together to address pressing global challenges, it is hoped that their collective efforts will lead to tangible progress and inspire young women and girls worldwide to strive for greater recognition, leadership, and participation in shaping our shared future. That concludes this edition of This Week. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, and goodbye.